here in studio with us today, Nellie Bowles. Who's going to talk to us about her new book, Morning After the Revolution, Dispatches from the Wrong Side of History. She's here in studio with me, Clay. She is formerly a New York Times correspondent. So she is a refugee from the communist camp, and we have much to discuss with her. And her book is actually about this to some degree. So let's start with it. And we want to talk about the Free Press as well, which is the media company that you and Barry Weiss.
Yes.
Barry Weiss has founded with her, and they're both, you guys are married and also founded this company together. It's doing very, very well. Nellie, let's start with Morning After the Revolution. So I did read the first 2 chapters, and it was fun because I got to sit there and say, so the New York Times is as insane from the inside as me, an outsider who grew up in New York City, thinks it is.
Well, first of all, let me just say it's a pleasure to be here.
Very nice to see you.
And
yes.
I don't think there are enough American flags around me in this studio right now.
There are many American flags.
There need to be more. There's some wall space that doesn't have an American flag on it. So I wrote the book as really an insider in prestige media. I think that what was going on at the New York Times, which anyone from the outside can obviously see what's happening inside more or less. I think what was going on there is also going on within NPR, within half a dozen of the prestige media brands. And it's basically a movement to say, don't report on anything that isn't beneficial specifically to the Democratic Party and to our sort of politics of the day. And that's just a really boring way to be a writer. Like, that's not a way, it's not fun. You can't be curious. And you're seeing now, I don't know if you saw last week, the editor-in-chief of the New York Times came out and said in a major earth-shattering statement, the New York Times is not in the business of helping promote Joe Biden, and we need to stop that sort of expectation.
Advocacy journalism.
And it's like the fact that he needed to say it is unbelievable. But it's amazing that he needed to make the statement. It was, of course, controversial that he made it. So it's a book about the last few years, which I think we all can see. Everyone went a little crazy. Yeah. And now is starting to come to their senses.
Cool, Clay. It's like she takes a little surveillance camera and we get to know what it's like inside the writing of the Daily Communist Manifesto over in Times Square. So,
well, look, I'm a longtime New York Times subscriber. I subscribe to the Washington Post. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I read everything, as you have to do when you're doing a show like this to try to familiarize yourself with all arguments. So I have a couple of questions, and I'm curious if you address them in the book. And thanks for coming in studio with us in New York, where Buck is right now. So one, is Trump, in your mind, a cause of this, or is he merely a symptom and he's not really the cause? I'm curious how you would assess that.
That's
Second
really
part
interesting.
Of this.
Yeah.
Second part of this, because I don't know the answer, and I think it's a great debate. Second part of this, how much of it do you think is subscription-based? In other words, instead of having an advertiser business, which is you want as many people as possible to read the paper, now you're basically selling to the diehards, which is a different business model. Those are 2 questions. I don't know what your answer would be, but I'm curious how you would assess them.
Those are both great questions I try to wrestle with in the book. I think if you look at how the New York Times is doing as a business, it's doing great.
Yeah.
And that's because, like you said, as it pivoted from being an advertiser business where Macy's and Clorox just want maximum eyes.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily, they actually really don't want it to just be limited to this political group or that political group. So you're incentivized to serve a broader audience. But as it pivots to a subscription business, the logical thing to do is to serve those subscribers. And what those subscribers want is red meat. They want to be told every single day the same bad things about Trump, things that it's not like it's lies necessarily, other than like lies of omission. Sometimes there's lies. But they want to be given the red meat of anti-Trump content every day. And they want the paper to be their sword in the world, to be their soldier out there fighting for them. And that's what they're paying for, the subscription. And the Times courted that with the advertising model and with the advertising campaigns around framing themselves as the subscriber's sword in the world. Now, as for did Trump and his rise,
Did he break them? This is we talked
Did-
about this a lot actually on
is
the
he
right.
the
Did
cause
Trump
or is he a
emotionally
symptom?
Yeah, did he emotionally break them, or is it just the last straw?
I'm going to go on the side of, I think Trump emotionally broke them a little bit. I think his wildness and his lack of like traditional decorum made it so the Democrats became a little wild and lost their sense of traditional decorum. Because if you think about all the old values of the old journalists and things, it's a lot of it is like a manners and decorum and sort of like, this is how we like to act and this is what we like to, the idea of objectivity is an aspiration. And when someone like Trump comes in and is a uniquely polarizing, or whatever you want to call it, he's wild. He's nuts. He's saying crazy shit.
Yeah, we were just talking to him. We were just talking to him last night.
He's saying crazy shit, and so yeah, and so then you've got the Times definitely reacting. You have the whole liberal intelligentsia definitely reacting. I don't think that's an excuse, though. I don't think you can say, "Oh, I just got a note saying no cursing." I'm in big trouble, guys.
No, it's okay. Just we're on broadcast radio. I wish we could just let you let it fly, but unfortunately there are limitations. There are limitations. Look, we were talking to Trump last night. He's Trump. You can't even really begin to describe it. I think at this point it's fair to say he's the most famous person on the planet. He's the most polarizing person in the United States of any real magnitude politically. And so the question as to whether or not he broke them, I could say this. I grew up here in New York City. My family were New York Times subscribers growing up. Most of the people that were around me, I think, have grown up to be Biden voting, Obama voting Democrats, etc. And it's very clear, though, that even they recognize what you said about the creation of the New York Times, or the perception of the New York Times as the sword in the world for the left. Trump, there was like an explicit shift, right, of now the truth is anti-Trump, therefore anti-Trump is the truth.
Yes.
And that changed. And I think that we saw that the Washington Post, saw that the New York Times.
We saw it at NPR. NPR came out proudly and said, we're not covering the Hunter Biden.
Right, because that
news.
would help the enemy effectively.
Proudly.
We're speaking to Nellie Bowles. Her book, by the way, Morning After the Revolution, Dispatches from the Wrong Side of History. And I just say, our producer, Allie Clay, read the entire thing. We get books sent on top books to top books. We get like, I have books for people I've never heard of before, books in foreign languages. Like, we got books everywhere here. For one of our producers to go and read it cover to cover and then make sure that Nellie comes on, I think, says something about what's in it. I just want to pose this one to you, Nellie. For me, actually, it felt like the Tom Cotton op-ed was, I know a lot of people felt this way, a turning point. A sitting senator making an argument on the editorial page is unacceptable to the rest of the tribe, so to speak, inside the Times. How did that play out?
I mean, at this point, we've all read a lot about how that played out, and how it played out was basically internally within the Times, every good reporter had to get together and tweet the same tweet. We were all supposed to tweet that this op-ed puts our black colleagues in danger, that a sitting senator saying to call in cops to call in the National Guard to quell some of the riots puts our colleagues somehow in danger. And if you didn't post that message, you were on the wrong side, and people would notice. They would reach out.
Person, right?
Yeah, and so
person. Yeah.
so I was never canceled. I'm not here like with a tiny violin complaining. Like, our life is great. We now have the free press. Like, things are fabulous. But at the time, when I was there as a staffer, when I didn't post the tweet and try to cancel the young editor who was behind that op-ed, or was one of the editors behind it, that was kind of my end of my time there. It was sort of the line drawn in the sand by the movement. And it said, you have to post something irrational. You have to post something that we all kind of know is a lie. The op-ed doesn't put lives in danger, but you have to do that. And if you don't, then you're clearly not with us. And that's not coming from the top down. That's coming bottom up. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in these companies and in universities too, right now with what's going on campus, it's bottom up, and then the leadership crumbles to it. So obviously then the editor, the opinion section editor at the Times, after that piece ran, had to resign, was basically fired, a forced resignation. Yeah.
Nellie,
his deputy also.
The last question for you, I encourage everybody to go check it out, and also check out the Free Press. Let me ask
Hell
you
yeah,
this.
check out the Free Press.
Having read this book, I did a little bit of player managing myself when I ran Outkick and then I sold it to Fox. I'm curious for you to analyze what you think the future is of news and journalism. I'm sure you thought about it a lot as you wrote the book. You're having a lot of success at the Free Press, which is a subscriber-based platform. You're a player manager, I would imagine, in some ways, along with your wife, and trying to manage this new era of journalism and news. Are you optimistic that we come through the Trump era, however it ends, and news is in a better place? Or do you think we fragmented and blown up to such an extent that everybody just goes and finds their shard of reality and there is no sort of cohesive news industry anymore? Where are we going?
I think the new world of media upstarts is obviously so exciting, guys. Like, real players who are coming up to push against the legacy press and to have the old values, but in slightly new formats. What are we at the Free Press? We're a newsletter that's now a website. We have a podcast. We're not doing anything revolutionary in terms of form. What's revolutionary is we're doing old-fashioned journalism with the skill sets and the values of the old world, but the freedom and curiosity of the new. And I'm really optimistic about us, obviously, but others too. I'm optimistic about a bunch of new media upstarts. And then what in my dream world happens is then all of these upstarts start to pressure the legacy media to be more honest, to get better, to improve itself. And so hopefully the Free Press ends up making the New York Times a better place and making NPR a better place. Hopefully it makes a better ecosystem, a more honest one. I think no one wants to be lied to, and no one wants, even your political adversaries, no one wants them fed lies.
I'm excited about the future as well. This is great. I'm going to read the book. To Buck's point, Allie's point, we get a lot of books. I'm very fascinated to read yours. Keep up the good work. Congrats on the book coming out, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. Your producer's a very smart woman.
We agree.
True story.
Number one fantasy sports app out there right now, Prize Picks. Over 5 million active members. Easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you haven't done it yet, do it today. Download the Prize Picks app, open it up. Even the occasional sports fan, you're going to love this if you like the NBA, if you like the NHL. Heck, if you like Major League Baseball on a day-to-day basis, as my boys do here in the Travis household, go Braves. You're going to be able to pick more or less on a huge variety of different players, and you can play it in Florida, you can play it in Georgia, you can play it in Texas, you can play it in California. If you've been feeling left out, best way to get action in more than 30 states, and you can get $100 just for signing up. A first deposit match of up to $100. Download the Prize Picks app, use the promo code CLAY to get set up. Get the deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. PrizePicks.com. Use my name, Clay, and get $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.